Hi, this is Ben Liebrand. You're looking at the best hi-fi channel in the world, Stjernholm Reviews.
Hi and welcome to Hi-Fi News and Quick Reviews on Stjernholm Reviews. It's the format that allows me to cover more ground for the audiophile in a hurry. Here I will mix news, snack size advice and rants with quick reviews and inspiration. As you know, Stjernholm Reviews breaks for nobody, and that's why I'm sitting out here in the RV for this episode as Stjernholm Reviews are renovating. The combined living room, home cinema and studio space is being upgraded acoustically in order to finally take my own medicine. Something I've been putting off for far too long due to all the work and downtime that is involved doing it. Acoustic problems are among the biggest issue I encounter when consulting unsatisfied audiophiles. While audio professionals often enjoy treated rooms made from the ground up for working with audio, it is a completely different situation in domestic homes where a lot of compromises are in play. Everything from speaker placement, room dimensions, annoying reflections from living room items, wife complaints, nasty resonances and more all impact the sound experience. Depending on how you listen, different solutions can be built into a room to achieve a more focused and uncolored sound. In my combined cinema, studio and living room, the reverb time was one of the things to get a little bit more under control, affecting the way I was able to listen. First part of the process were to determine how much absorption was needed, and for this I brought in my longtime acoustic specialist and sound mentor Eddie B. Brixton from the company EBB Consult to help me advising on this particular use case. Reverberation time based on the function of frequency was measured and the amount of absorption needed calculated. Just by using efficient absorbers in the ceiling, the desired result in this area can be achieved by using the very efficient Echophon 40mm absorbers. I will cover more on the project and the results in episodes to come, where I will try to share what we learn on this project. While at it, things like upgrading the lights and installing motorized acoustic curtains are being integrated into the RTI custom control system as well. If you're interested in acoustics yourself, I can recommend checking the Stjernholm Reviews channel recommendations. Here you will find the very active Acoustic Fields channel. On to the segment I call Read the Damn Manual. Even though I try to be thorough in the reviews, I too make mistakes and get things wrong sometimes, or run into a new discovery that fundamentally changes the conclusion of a review, so a correction is needed. So if you find wrong factual statements in my reviews, please do use the comments or send me a mail and I will feature the corrections in this segment. This also applies to manufacturers, where I really welcome manufacturers' comments. When reviewing the Cocktail Audio X45 Pro multi-tool, I did the listening test using the analog outputs only. But when I later used the digital outputs during the review of the Technics SUG 700 Mark II digital amplifier, I was hearing something gritty, especially in very low parts of sensitive classical music. Not knowing what I was actually hearing, I conducted a full test revealing a low-level pulsating digital noise present on the Toslink, the coax and the AS-EBU outputs only. Something I think it's fair to say should not be possible on a high-end spec audiophile product. Naturally, I reported this to Cocktail Audio and proved it with samples and videos and comparison recordings in order to find out if they could reproduce it, as everything just pointed to a faulty digital output board in my particular unit. And it's just looping. We are connected to coax 1 and coax 2. The X45 is coax 1, and I got the noise. Let's see if you can hear it. I'll be very silent. So you should hear the pulsating noise. Now we switch to coax 2. And after a lengthy dialogue back and forth with Cocktail Audio, where they among other things try to fix it via a software update, I can conclude that it is in fact a design flaw on their part in the construction of the product, not at all in line with their marketing that promises the best, most high quality sound and specs. Once they found out that there was no fix, they just chose to go all silent. There's been no further communication, no offer to replace the unit with something else or taking it back, and even the local distributor can't get an answer from them. All it is to me is a €5,000 X45 Pro that is useless for the purpose that it was purchased for. But to Cocktail Audio, it exposes quite a nasty company culture where the company doesn't stand behind their own products when shit hits the fan. They seem kind of unaware that it is really not the mistakes themselves that should define an innovative company. Mistakes are a part of learning. What defines a company is what they do with them. In that regard, Cocktail Audio has really lost their cherry.
That's all I have to say about that.
In the big review of the Yamaha 5000 series, I said this. The power amp meters has different meter modes that can be set to peak, VU, off, or what I would call party mode, where the light pulsates in a disturbing manner without the meters moving. What's the fun in that? Mr. Smartass reviewer here did not read the manual, where I could have learned that the disturbing flashing is in fact a smart way of setting the level of backlit brightness on the M5000 meter. When reaching the level you want, you simply switch to either VU or peak mode, and the M5000 remembers the level.
And the M5000 remembers the level. And the M5000 remembers the level. And the M5000 remembers the level.
Duh! Thank you so much to viewer Sepp for pointing this one out. Correction has been added in the video description as well. When buying expensive hi-fi gear, I think it's worthwhile to spend some time going in depth with the user experience, as this is your connection to the music. In the review of the Gold Note DS10 DAC recently and some of its family, you can find out how it is to live with. One criticism that could really not escape was the user experience, where the device connected is already playing, resulting in screaming loud music playing and your wife filing for divorce. There's absolutely no reason or logic behind this behavior. It is simply amazing how little attention some hi-fi companies have on their software, something that I, coming from the world of professional audio, never have thought was the reality of the hi-fi business of today. One factor that might be a part of the reason is that consumers are more likely to blame themselves for not using the product correctly than something being wrong with it. So most don't actually complain. Hi-fi manufacturers, on the other side, interpret that as satisfied customers, adding to a vicious circle of underwhelming software experiences, especially in streaming products. I wonder if that is actually a contributing reason for the rise of vinyl. Nuprime has introduced a new monoblock power amplifier named,
drumroll please,
Evolution 2. And the local distributor was kind enough to send me a pair for a quick review. The specs are madly impressive, with almost no harmonic distortion and 600 watts RMS per channel at 4 ohms, with a peak delivery of 820 watts, combined with Class A characteristics. Sound engineer Tim Harris and I conducted a blind test during a nice long listening session, comparing them to the Evolution 1 monoblocks that I ended up keeping as reference amplifiers after my review here on the channel. The new monoblocks look basically the same as the Evolution 1s, so it was very easy to conduct a true blind test for Tim. Only connoisseurs will notice the differences here that are primarily done on the inside. The listening session revealed a weighty warm and immensely powerful dynamic amplifier that Tim preferred over the Evolution 1. I gave them a spin for a couple of days and decided that I actually liked the Evolution 1's a bit better in combination with my Rare Techniques SBR1 reference floor standards, presenting more of that clarity and openness I personally like with that combination. I'm guessing that the €4,400 Evolution 2 is not replacing the €4,000 Evolution 1 right away, but it's kept as a addition so far until stock runs out probably. If you don't need 600 watts of power, there's also the Evolution STA to consider, which is a dual mono configuration with the Evolution 2 technology at a very reasonable €5,500 price tag for that kind of performance. If you're in the market for a pair of mono blocks and you have the chance, you should sample both, as I found the sound to be quite different between the Evolution 1 and the Evolution 2. While talking about Nuprime, I also had the pleasure of listening to their AMG DAC for a longer period while doing the DAC showdown. I was not so crazy about the design and the bit of cryptic daily use on it, but this was totally made up for by the sound that I really liked. This is a very good sounding machine that brings some lovely warmth together with articulation that sounds like it belongs in a different, much higher price category at €2,400. If you're looking for a simple DAC in that price range, check out the AMG DAC. If you were a teenager or maybe even DJing like me in the 80s, you likely know everything about the 12-inch vinyl record, often dubbed as maxi singles, the bigger and better sounding wide groove vinyl format that got spun in the clubs. Those special releases often featured extended versions, dub mixes, a cappellas, instrumentals and remixes popular with DJs and dance floors that have really never gotten the attention they deserve by record labels notoriously known for not maintaining their historic master archives. And as a result of not collecting the original masters, digital reissues of these historic gems are often based on a vinyl copy. Thankfully, Dutch DJ and producer Ben Liebrand, famous for numerous great remixes, consistent mega mixes, and productions over many decades in the dance music industry, is quite an audiophile, taking interest in this very thing and made it a part of his life work to track down and preserve the best masters of these special versions. I invited the man, the myth, the legend himself, Ben Liebrand, to tell us more about it here on the channel. The first release was like in 2003, 4?
I think in 2002, 2003, yes. At the time, I was working on the Grand Mix Disco Edition. I was asking for a 12-inch version of a Robert Palmer track. The record company just sent me a short snippet and an MP3. And I'm like, but that's not the master. And then it turned out that they didn't have the master at hand, and the person that was sending me the files didn't know the difference between something that makes sound and a master. And then it turned out that yes, they did have an archive, but in order to send someone into the archive, that would cost so much money that they could never earn it back. So that's why the record company who has the masters, has them in their archive, doesn't use the archive because it's too expensive to retrieve something from the archive. And that kind of was the spark, like, at this moment, I see such strange things going on with record companies discarding their archives, just throwing them in the bin. And that was the incentive for me to pitch this idea to Sony. I want to make a series which collects the long versions, the 12-inch versions, which I feel important in master quality.
It seems to me like quality has always been something to recognize you by, right?
Yeah.
Where did that come from?
I'm a nerd. Up till I think about 1995, I never used master compression at all. And the thing, my reasoning was that if you are in a club, obviously there is a lot of noise, there is a lot of reverb going on. So I was always trying to make my 12-inch version sound that extra bit of clean, so that when you would play it in a club with the extra whatever's going on in the club, it would still sound very clear. It's a different philosophy to the whole thing.
And how does it go about? How do you do the selections and find the masters?
It's a difficult process for a couple of reasons. The reason to start this whole series is because it turned out that record companies, they have the rights for a specific track, but they don't have the master. And in other occasions, you have the master, but you don't know which company has the rights. Then you have companies that just don't want to cooperate for utterly silly reasons. People are asking for specific tracks with that particular company because that company is not putting out the masters. You know, they might make available an MP3 for anyone, but not an uncompressed master. Obviously, we are trying to get specific tracks. We might get through to the record company or we might not. So there are always a bunch of tracks left which we couldn't get. So those also are transferred to the next edition, see if we can get them then. For example, several years back, I was trying to get Rotation and Beyond by Herb Alpert, but he wasn't licensing out anything. I sent them the opening dance of my wedding with my wife to Rotation by Herb Alpert. I sent them the video with the message, this might indicate how much this track means to me. Within 4 hours, everything was okay. So we got the we got permission to use the track. You have to convey the point to the record company that this is not because you're throwing together a compilation. This is a compilation which contains the important tracks. And that's also where the name Grand came from. So if you look at edition 1, 2, 3, 4, that's all filled with stuff where I'm like, doesn't matter what happens, first I want to have these tracks on, and then we can get to the rest. If we get the permission, that's one hurdle taken. Then we go to find the best sounding version. If we can trace the tapes, we also go after the tapes to see if we can get a transfer from the tape. Here's the thing that a lot of people don't think about. When a tape was made in the early 80s, and in the early 80s, you know, halfway the 80s, you had the first available digital recording techniques, and they were only 16-bit 44.1 kilohertz. But it would be a transfer from the original master, which was very fresh, to 16-bit 44.1 kilohertz. So many years later, you can make a 24-bit transfer, but that tape doesn't sound fresh anymore. So you have a pristine capture of a tape that meanwhile is actually deteriorated, which results in a very gritty mid-high end. And it turns out that an old 16-bit transfer just sounds infinitely better than a new transfer made today from that same tape, because it's just so old. Tapes that I have been working on for projects back in the 80s, which the first thing I would do is also record it onto the Sony F1. It's AD and DA converters. They just sound sweet. I will be looking for the master that reproduces the most effortlessly, I mean the most smooth, where, you know, where there's no distortion, where there's no emphasization going on, where it's just smooth. So if we can get the tape, that would be fine. Then if we can get a digital transfer from the record company, which was made back then, that's also fantastic. With CD, what I do is that over the last years, when also Facebook came available, I request masters. And it turns out I'll have my own version. I'll have the version from the record company, and then I'll get in another 60 different versions from people. I put them all in my editor, and then I just start A-Bing until I end up in the last one. And it can be that the last one is either the one I transferred way back in the day from my Sony F1 system, or it can be the one from the record company, but it can also be from some rare Japanese pressing from the CD where the technician made such a fantastic transfer that it beats all the other ones I've got. Sometimes a CD version might still be better than the version I got from the record company, even though it was a good transfer. And we also had it in the past where there was no digital version. So I transferred it from vinyl, and I transferred it on a proper high-end turntable using different cartridges. So much attention putting into this transfer, and it really sounded great. And then I put on the master tape, and it still was like somebody walked up and pulled away the curtains from your speakers, opening up the high end, and they're just drawing away a layer of grit in the high end. And I was like, yes, okay, yes, I get it. This now proves that with all the technology I had and the high-end cartridge, still the master will sound better. And that was a digital master.
Have you made any house calls in order to obtain better masters?
But you told me to come over.
Funny enough / sadly enough, it turns out it's not an opinion, but it's more like a, what I've gathered from all these calls with a lot of producers and a lot of colleague remixers is that I'm one of the very, very few who took the effort of making their own master copies. Whilst most remixers, when the assignment is done, then the master is sent out and they haven't kept anything for themselves.
Exactly.
And they don't have the multi-track, they don't have the 2-track masters. I think I've been one of the few that loved all of this so much that I also took the effort to save these masters. It was just getting in the tapes and the utter thrill of holding these tapes, holding these masters. The other thing would be to be able to go back to a version. If something happens, that I can still go back to the digital copy I made.
Exactly.
When the tape came in. I didn't even know there would be a later. I didn't even know that there would be the necessity to start a series like Grand 12 Inches.
Wow. Ben Liebrand,
Cool.
The highest quality, most consistent man in the music industry.
Just trying to do what makes sense.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Ben.
Thank you.
The Grand 12-inch series now spans 19 editions, with number 19 just being released, each with 40 12-inch tracks on them. When you purchase the series, you can even get downloadable updates as uncompressed WAV files if Ben finds better sounding masters or alternative versions. As a total sucker for that kind of nostalgia, I naturally got them all, re-experiencing the tracks from a special time in the best shape they have ever been. What a treat. On to some snack advice. With storage systems being so cheap these days, a 2 terabyte SSD drive can store about 3,000 CDs in an uncompressed WAV format. By keeping all the bits and using a common file format like WAV, you have much higher probability for future compatibility no matter what kind of software or hardware you will use in the future. With the starting point being an uncompressed format, you also have the best possible master for future file conversions. Even while there's so-called lossless compression methods available, using the native uncompressed format gives more peace of mind and avoids the risk of having to rip your CDs again like ever. Username WVJA Dragon writes in the comments on my Clips Cornwall 4-speaker review something that I found to be really great hi-fi words of wisdom. He wrote, "For the first 3 decades of my journey towards my ultimate sound, I was consumed by the pursuit of capturing every minuscule detail. However, the more I progressed, the more distant I felt from my goal. That was until I met the guy at the audio store who suggested I gave these a try. Within just 30 seconds of listening, my quest came to an end as I finally realized what I have been missing all along, the vitality and soul of the music." WVGA Dragon, thank you for sharing that one. Even though I had scheduled the new Technics SLG 700 Mark II for review earlier, there was a delay in the delivery, causing it to arrive after we started work in the listening room. I will do my best to do a small review, nevertheless, of this machine, with the potential to be the only source and DAC you'll ever need, being a CD, SACD player, media server streamer, DAC and more. Until then, remember to just listen. And please do butter me up with your kind like and subscribe if you want more contents like this. You just need to tap, tap, tap. Meanwhile, enjoy all the other content on the channel and see you soon. Thank you for your support, everybody.